Joker tells the story of Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who was a mentally ill and broken man, slowly deteriorating into madness and eventually becoming the iconic comic book character, the Joker. That's right, we are talking about Todd Phillips' Joker from 2019, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Robert De Niro. Yes, this is a film that, when it came out, it was bashed. That's somebody just flying by my house really fast in some jacked up diesel truck. Don't worry about that. This was a film that, when it came out, it was polarizing. There were some critics that were just so harsh to this fucking film, just so harsh on it, saying that it's too gratuitous and too violent and stuff like that. Then you had other people that think that this is probably the greatest comic book film ever made. And where do I fall on that spectrum? I think it's tied for me when it comes to terms of greatest comic book movies ever made. For me, this one's tied with Spider-Man 2 for being the greatest comic book movie ever made, because I adored this film when it came out in theater, and I still adore it to this day. So I got my notebook, my Joker notebook. Fits kind of fits the occasion. Got even my girlfriend drew this for me. It's a picture of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and it's got the, I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a fucking comedy. That line from the film. So, Joker 2019, our story here, reading it out of my notes, our story here is actually really, really well done. A story should always get somebody engaged in what is going on in front of you, and this also has to do with the characters, because especially one character in particular being Arthur Fleck, I think is the best written character in this film, because our story and our character writing here makes it to where, even though you know what the outcome is going to be, considering that this is a movie about the Joker, you know what the outcome of it is going to be. You know he's going to do bad things, but they get you, they hook you in, they make you want to sympathize with this character, because you know he's not a terrible person, that, you know, he's just off his rocker because they cut off his medication. And you cheer for him. You don't want him to do these horrible, awful things, but he does it anyway. And then when he does them, you know, you can't sympathize with them anymore. But the whole film is being told from Arthur's perspective, so you're seeing everything from his perspective. And a lot of the times you understand where he's coming from, even though you don't support what the bad things he does around the second half of this movie. He does bad things, and the movie doesn't try to romanticize it either. The movie tries to, I think, the way I interpreted it is trying to send a message about mental illness. And from this film, I don't gather that Arthur Fleck is a bad person. I think that a lot of it had to do with the medication and mental illness. It doesn't make him a horrible person, because he says there's things he does that are horrible in the film, okay? There's things that, like, you don't sympathize with him anymore because he does them. But I think, you know, this is the kind of character that if he had had his medication, everything would have been fine. I mean, even before they cut him off his medication in the film, they still treat him like shit, and he's still always down in the dumps. But I think if he had had his medication, obviously, I don't think the events of this film would have ever happened, which, therefore, you wouldn't have had a film. So, I mean, you know, we can't just not have a film and just say, oh, well, there's your medication, there's the rest of the film. Nah. Doesn't have his medication, we get this brilliant-ass fucking film. So, our story and our characters, I didn't mean to get on some big tirade and some big speech. I'm not trying to give some big speech on medication and mental health and all that. I just kind of just felt like saying all that. But yeah, our story and our characters are really well done, especially with Arthur Fleck. And then you got Murray Franklin, who's played by Robert De Niro, who is not really in this movie a whole lot. And I feel like Murray Franklin's character was just there really to add another perspective. So like I said, you're watching most of this film from Arthur Fleck's perspective. Murray Franklin, I feel like, offers another perspective because he says on the show before he's shot and killed on the show that not everybody is bad, because that's what Arthur is. That's the mindset he's under. Everybody's a horrible person. Nobody understands him. Even though he's mentally ill, everybody still treats him like shit anyway. Murray Franklin's just there really to offer another perspective. But because you're watching the film in Arthur's perspective, you think that Murray Franklin, and it's done purposefully in a way, that you think that Murray Franklin has him there for bad intentions, to make fun of him, to make a laughing stock out of him. But you don't really know what Murray Franklin's real intentions were through that whole scene. I mean, maybe he was just had him on the show because maybe he genuinely thought he was funny. Who knows? You don't know, but it kind of just leaves that there's that gray area in there where maybe Murray Franklin was a bad person that was just there to make fun of him, or maybe he wasn't. Because you're only seeing it from Arthur's perspective. And it's not a flaw either. I'm not complaining about that. The whole film was done well from Arthur's perspective, but I just feel like Murray Franklin being there was just to add another perspective on this whole thing. But the violence is violent. When it gets violent, it is violent, but it's not. There's not so much violence in this movie where, somebody's getting killed every 10 minutes of the film. It's not that kind of film. This is a character study, not a slasher movie or not an action movie. This is a character study of the Joker. So yes, it is an R-rated film. This is not a kid-friendly comic book film. When I went to go see this thing in the theater, there's even a sign that warned parents this is not like a Batman versus Joker kid-friendly comic book film. This is a very hard R kind of, not a kid's film. So when the violence does hit, it does hit, and it is very violent. And I think that it's used very well. Violence is a tool for storytelling, and I feel like that applies to this film. Because it furthers, it brings Arthur's character arc around. He starts out, like I said, as this broken man. He really wouldn't hurt anybody, and once he gets off his medication, he turns into this violent sociopath. And that's his character arc. So the violence kind of adds to it. If there was no violence, there'd be no character arc. So the violence was necessary in this movie. So, like I said, this was a different kind of comic book film. This is a kind of comic book film that you don't want to show this to your kids. This is not a kids movie. I don't recommend it to children. I'd say 15 is probably the best age to watch this film. Not just because it's violent and has bad language, but because I think that this is a more mature film. This is an adult film, so I don't think a kid that's 10 years old would want to sit and watch a film like this. They'd want to see, your Batman versus Joker kind of thing. So, yeah, no, this is definitely a different kind of comic book film. I don't recommend this to kids, not just because of the violence. It's not even really as much of the violence as I just don't think this would be a movie that kids would enjoy anyway, aside from the violence. Yeah, I'd say probably 14, 15 years old, you'd probably be able to appreciate this movie. That's probably the age I think you would start developing an appreciation for these kinds of movies. Because like I said, I started appreciating Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and all that when I was 16. So, it's definitely, this is a more mature comic book film. That's not throwing shade at any other comic book movies. This is just a more, like I said, grounded and bleak take on a comic book character. And the last thing I want to talk about is Gotham City. Oh, another thing I want to talk about, the whole relationship thing. Obviously, that thing was in his head. There's some people that are still saying, was it really in his head, though? Yeah, I think it was all in his head. He never had a relationship with that girl. I think that was just all in his head. But Gotham City, I really like the way Gotham City looks in this movie. It looks really trashy and really dumpy, and I think it really fits what Todd Phillips was going for. Everybody treats Arthur like shit, and I mean, it's a shit hole. It's a shitty looking city. So it kind of goes hand in hand for me. These shitty people come from this shitty city. That was actually really hard to say. Yeah, these shitty people come from this shitty city, and they treat Arthur like shit. They walk all over him. Even those kids that beat the fuck out of him at the beginning of the film. You see all the trash piled up on the street corners in Gotham City. It actually makes for a really nice atmosphere. Just a very grim and gritty looking atmosphere. Something as simple as having trash bags piled up on the street corners. That's just me, though. That's just me. I really enjoyed this film and the score. The composer that wrote the score for this thing. I'm not gonna try to pronounce their name, but holy fuck, they nailed it. Especially the scene in the bathroom where he's dancing in front of the mirror and whatnot. I thought that was one of my favorite scenes in the film. So it's really all I have to say about Todd Phillips' Joker. So what did you guys think of Joker? You know, did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments what you guys thought. So thank you guys. I can't believe we're already halfway through comic book movie month. So tell me who your favorite Joker is. Personally, live action Jokers, I'm going to say Joaquin Phoenix is probably my favorite. And animated goes to Mark Hamill from the animated series. So, who's your favorite Joker? Is it Joaquin Phoenix? Is it Mark Hamill? Is it Heath Ledger? Jack Nicholson? Who's your favorite Joker? Let me know who your favorite Joker is down in the comments. So, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'm out. Peace.